Hi, I'm John Stockton.
And I'm Ken Ruettgers.
At The Ultimate Assist, together we offer straightforward insights and expert conversations to help you take control of your life, your health, and your freedom. What if one simple dietary supplement could dramatically improve your circulation, your energy, and heart health without prescriptions or invasive treatments? Years ago, John Hewlett, the founder, formulator, and driving force behind Cardio Miracle, learned about the Nobel Prize-winning supplement for heart and circulation called L-arginine, a nitric oxide supplement. He spent years formulating. John kept at it, adding more and more beneficial nutrients. His formulation combines 50-plus bioavailable nutrients, including L-arginine, L-citrulline, hawthorn berry, and vitamin D, into a delivery system that boosts nitric oxide faster and longer than any other product out there. As a natural health advocate and innovator, John saw firsthand how thousands struggled with chronic fatigue, poor circulation, and toxic medication side effects. His mission, a natural alternative to whole body wellness that also helps anti-aging for the brain. If you want more energy, better workouts, and stronger overall health, check out their game-changing nitric oxide supplement at cardiomiracle.com/theultimateassist. That's cardiomiracle.com/theultimateassist. Fuel your body from the inside out. John knows all about nitric oxide. Let's jump in. Hi, and welcome to The Ultimate Assist. I'm John Stockton, along with my co-host, Mr. Ken Ruettgers.
Well, John, you're back in the studios, and I'm distant due to technology. I can still beam in, but I tell you what, I'm so excited today because, and a little jealous because I'd love to be there to shake hands with our guest. He is amazing, and he's really put together an amazing product. I'll tell you.
He really has. And we're talking about, of course, the Cardio Miracle, and we're talking about our guest, Mr. John Hewlett. Welcome, John. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, John. It's great to be with you and Ken. I didn't think this day would come, so I'm very excited to be with you, great gentlemen. I've watched and known John since draft day years ago, and had the chance. I could almost give him a high five as he left the floor, because I sat on the front row of the Jazz for 20 years. It was an awesome thing, and so I have all the good memories. I don't have all the current brain damage that some of the fans are going through.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about sports is, especially if you played it, you don't remember all the bad things.
Exactly. Once a champion, always a champion.
Yeah. So I wish we could have accomplished that one, but we did all right, and my memories are great, so I have no complaint. But we're here today to talk about, as I remember you were a fan. Like you said, you were in the front row there, and you were there every single home game. But we're on a different direction now, and you've created this miracle product called Cardio Miracle.
Well, what happened, John, actually, is that the time I think it might have been having to watch Joey Crawford and some of those guys referee, I had heart trouble that developed after all the stress. In fact, I have to say that I was shocked that I think we could have made a lot of money if we'd have bet on Frank Layden outliving some of our mutual friends from both the team and the coaching staff. Frank Layden was amazing as he ran up and down the sidelines and ran his blood pressure up the flagpole. But I actually had a family history of heart disease in my family. Father, uncle, all died 62, 57, 65. And so I was next. And I can tell you that there are probably a few Jazz games in the 90s where I had a little bit of chest pains going on. And so I had to kind of try to calm down. But the reality was I had genetics working against me. And as you can tell, I always said that if I was as tall as our mutual friend Mark Eaton, I would be perfect. But since I'm not, I'm a foot short for my weight. But the reality is I was a pretty good basketball player at the high school level.
Varsity?
Varsity? State champ.
Okay,
Varsity captain of the team, East High School, 1970. So 100 pounds ago, I wasn't bad. Three-point shooter before the three-point line, actually.
That's right.
And but played against Stu Morrill, that you probably know well.
Great Gonzaga.
We actually beat Stu and Craig Drury, who also was his teammate, and Doug Richards and Belmont Anderson, a lot of great guys who never went in the pros.
Right.
But Stu Morrill was about 270 pounds in high school. So he was like a lumbering big giant with big flock of white hair. But no, we beat all those guys and won the state title in 1970. But as I grew older, I became more of a workaholic. I was in the financial business. I remember taking your folks to a Jazz game and taking your financial advisors and from time to time. And you and I played golf at the Salt Lake Country Club. I remember one day back in the time. But I wasn't in good health. And so as the years went on, I thought my days were numbered. And I ended up having a routine, if there is such a thing, emergency appendectomy. And the system almost killed me 3 times in one 48-hour period. And after getting out, they said, you've got to come back and have quadruple bypass. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not coming back. And that led me on the quest to find natural alternatives for heart disease. I was fortunate enough to find the science of nitric oxide. And so I left my very lucrative financial business to become an advocate of nitric oxide for the last 17 years. And in that 17 years, I haven't missed a day of work, haven't been sick one day, not in 17 years, and I haven't been on a prescription medication for over 17 years.
Why is nitric oxide, a lot of people haven't even heard of it. I mean, all I think about is when it comes to heart is when people have heart attacks, they get the nitroglycerin shot. You know, the EMTs come in and go boom. So what is nitric oxide and why is it important?
Well, nitric oxide is actually like the grandchild of nitroglycerin. Nitroglycerin was developed by Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Prize. He actually ran a manufacturing munitions plant that made explosives, and they found that the workers on the weekend were having heart attacks, but not during the week, because they were inhaling this nitric oxide gas that actually is somewhat toxic, but it dilates and relaxes the heart and the arteries. And so that led to eventually other scientists saying, is this nitric oxide bad? What is it? And so from about the about the length of your career, John, when you started with the Jazz, from there to 1998, which was, right there in the playoffs, in the finals, basically the whole nitric oxide science emerged, going from there, they were afraid that it was toxic and noxious to people and harmful, to having it being called the miracle molecule, and that it was literally able to save lives. And the Nobel Prize was awarded on its impact on reversing cardiovascular problems in 1998.
Does the nitric oxide come from the body? Do we create nitric oxide?
Great question. Nitric oxide is the third essential gas in the body. Oxygen, carbon dioxide, and then nitric oxide is like the regulator. It's like the air traffic control. It's the one that balances out the levels of oxygen and nitric and carbon dioxide, which helps people. It helps people to be able to avoid abnormal replication of cells, which often leads to cancer. And so nitric oxide, now there's over 200,000 scientific studies on its impact on the human body, and they've now found that it's probably the most important single item in helping to regulate all organs and all bodily functions, including blood flow, oxygenation levels, and helping to build and strengthen the arterial system and the lymphatic system. So the science has been amazing. I happened to stumble into it in 2007, and I've spent now 18 years this coming September on trying to understand it as much as possible. And I worked with another company that helped reverse my medical cardiovascular challenges. And after 4 or 5 years, I realized they weren't as committed to the science as I was. So I walked away from a second multi-million-dollar career and said, I guess I have to do this myself. And thus Cardio Miracle was born, where I said, I'm going to spare no expense. I want to have the finest product in the world. I'm going to validate it with science, because I wasn't quite sure about the ethics and the corruption that had beset corporate America and the health programs of our country. And so I wanted to prove it scientifically so that the data would stand up for itself against all scrutiny from people who had a conflict of interest.
Well, necessity obviously is the mother of invention, right? And you're seeing yourself as next man up in your family, and you have issues. So you've created this product. And I noticed there's not nitric oxide in the product, so you're not injecting nitric oxide into people. No. What's your system? If I may add, I see 2 amino acids in there.
There's several, actually.
Okay.
You have the arginine and citrulline, which were the basis of the Nobel Prize. We also have organic beets. We hear a lot about beets on television, about, take your beets and get your nitric oxide. In fact, most people, they sometimes mix up nitrous oxide and nitric oxide. Nitrous is laughing gas.
Yes,
Get
sir.
going. But nitric oxide is that third essential gas, and that's created when you eat beets, spinach, kale, even some types of exotic fruit. That creates a nitrate in your mouth, and that's a pathway. But when you take an ingredient with amino acids like arginine, citrulline, ornithine, carnitine, D-ribose, those types of things, those amino acids, primarily arginine and citrulline, stimulate through the gut and go into the bloodstream. The blood against the wall of the arterial wall tells the body, create nitric oxide like you're a teenager again. It's like taking, John Stockton still in phenomenal shape, now moving into the later decades of life. But I remember watching you chase Ricky Green around, the fastest of them all, and John Stockton, the most active of them all, and the fact that you have that kind of energy. Well, that's actually what nitric oxide produced by your body, stimulated by arginine, citrulline, and beets, actually gives you energy, and it dilates the arteries so you get more blood flow, and that blood flow contains more oxygen, and then it opens up the arterial wall. So if you add anti-inflammatories, antioxidants, and other nutrients, they become bioavailable or absorbable and give you better nutrition.
Well, there's no drugs involved.
All natural food, plant-based, 58 ingredients now, the finest in the world, spared no expense.
Yeah, let's talk about the ingredients right there.
Sure.
Ingredients. So I've noticed, we've been in this world for a while trying to pick out the best supplements, best everything, and the raw materials is such a huge part of that. Everybody tells you spinach is great, but if it's been glyphosated and it's been processed and things like that, you've wasted your time trying to eat the spinach. So what are you doing? How are you getting the raw materials, and where are you finding them?
Excellent question. Well, one of the places that we get our best organic fruits and vegetables is from the Columbia River Basin, the Dalles in Oregon. As you probably know, the fruit from Oregon in many cases is some of the best in the world. We test everything multiple times coming to our manufacturer. We test for glyphosate. We test for the different types of herbicides and pesticides. We test for contamination. Because as you know, John, I've been so impressed the last few years watching you become so educated in this space. But you can have bad ground. You and I both have been to Park City. Well, part of Park City was built on silver mine tailings. And back in my era, in the 70s, when I lived at Jeremy Ranch by our mutual friend Mark Eaton, they were having all kinds of people dying of cancer in that part of Park City because they were on top of mining tailings that were toxic. And so if you were planting a garden in a toxic earth, you're going to get sick eating that vegetable. So organic is really important, but what's more important is the source of the organics and then testing it. And all of our ingredients are powdered. They're either freeze-dried or powdered in such a way that they can be tested for all of those things that we want to be protected from, like the glyphosates, the herbicides, pesticides, et cetera. So all of our ingredients are sourced, food, plant-based, from all over the world. Many of the amino acids come from the Far East. They dominate the whole world in that area, but we test them so rigorously and have spared no expense that we feel very, very comfortable, and we do subsequent testing as time goes on to make sure that everything in every batch of Cardio Miracle meets the highest standards. So we're approved with all the major approvals. One thing you might find interesting, there's a certification through the years called the Sport NSF type of for athletes. Later on came a higher level, the BSCG.
Is that like being able to pass a test for the Olympics?
For the Olympics.
Yes, sir.
At the highest level.
Yep.
We're probably the only nitric oxide supplement like this that has that designation and certification. So we had to go to a higher level.
It is a higher level too, because when we played in the Olympics, we were tested all year long.
I'll bet.
Every player was. and because they didn't want to have any mistakes happen at the Olympics, because you do take supplements and whatnot. I remember one of our players in the '96 Olympics actually tested positive for steroids. And he was just a really skinny, clearly not a steroid guy, right? Clearly. And what had happened, he'd gotten a rash. Well, he got in a rash, and to combat the rash, they gave him some ointment. And that's how sensitive some of those Olympic tests are. So if you're passing those tests,
we passed that. It took us 12 years to get to a point that we could afford to make that kind of testing requirement. We always knew it was passed because we sourced so carefully, but to actually get the certification now almost a year ago was fantastic. And that's why college programs, athletic programs, even people at the Jazz and others are looking at Cardio Miracle because it's passed all of that scrutiny at the highest levels.
So you started this with heart in mind. Without
Totally.
doubt. And L-arginine was the big things. Look here, because it helps create the nitric oxide.
Helps relax the heart muscle. Right.
Okay. But that's not, and you named it Cardio Miracle, but that's not where you're saying that it's good for everybody. It's good for athletes. It increases oxygen. Am I right?
Totally, and really helps the performance through the lymphatic system. One of the things that's overlooked is people think of oxygen and high performance, but what you want to do is get rid of the ammonia before it becomes lactic acid so you can actually perform better, longer, recover faster. And we found from our athletic bikers, hikers, runners, athletes, weightlifters, etc., they're actually able to increase by 25 to 35% greater performance in the workout, but recover in half the time. Even ultra marathons, triathletes, they're back on the bike the next day as opposed to being crippled up for 2 or 3, 4 days after completing a race.
Ken, in football, do you guys have lactic acid buildup? I mean, I know pumping iron, you do, right? But do you?
Yeah. And John, you turned me on to Cardio Miracle about 6 months ago, and so I did the research on it, and I've been taking it for about 3 months now. But I have really good blood pressure, but I appreciate the vascular benefits and the heart benefits. But one of the things that I saw when I looked at the ingredients was the benefit for joints. And football, if you play football for a few years at the top levels, or even at the college level, you're going to come out probably with some inflammation, L-arginine, turmeric, things like that are part of the ingredients, other ingredients as well. But John, I have a question for you. I love that about it, and it's in one product, which instead of having to get 18 different individual products,
80 capsules, 80 capsules in order to get the same benefit. Yep. Yes,
exactly. But John, my question is, for joint pain, inflammation, that heart, cardio, what about neurological or autoimmune type issues? Have you talked to anybody that has benefited in those areas?
Absolutely, Ken. And let me tell you, right on with the football injuries. I remember a few years ago going to Lavelle Edwards' funeral, and who was a friend of mine, and I standing next to all the players and listening to them as they were going in to greet Patty Edwards and saying, oh my gosh, if I had to do it over again, I don't think I'd play, because I've got a shoulder 4 times, knees, ACLs. I mean, just the injuries of the football players go through. Well, you might be excited to know that in June of last year, we published an article in the scientific journal, Combat Stress Scientific Journal. And in that journal, they had never, ever evaluated a supplement, ever. And it took a year to get approved through all their multiple boards. They actually they accepted a full article, peer-reviewed, that said that Cardio Miracle's ingredients had a dramatic impact on all neurological symptoms, all, including long-haul COVID, including ALS, including MS, including traumatic brain injury from car accidents or from too many linebackers hitting you at full speed, or those types of things. And then it also said that they believe, though with further study, it might be the best prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia. And from having played football, what's the mortality rate of offensive linemen? Early 50s. Early 50s is how long they live. And the same thing, John, in the NBA. How many 7-footers do we know that have died before life expectancy. And that's obviously a cardiovascular issue because you've got to send blood to something a lot higher than 6'2" or 6'4". So absolutely, that's a big deal. And so we're really interested in the ethnic community for diabetes. There's a dramatic improvement in the A1C, which is the inflammation marker. We see that improve within 60, 90 days in many instances. And back to the anti-inflammatories, which are important. We have astaxanthin, which is one of the great anti-inflammatories. Turmeric in its natural form, which is a great anti-inflammatory. Grapeseed extract, and then 24 other botanicals that all are antioxidants or anti-inflammatories. And nitric oxide is known as the body's greatest natural anti-inflammatory that the body produces.
Wow. Well, that's quite a pitch, not to put a bad thing out. So let's talk about the science for a minute. And you've mentioned it a few times, and isn't it funny how a term like that makes me cringe now? And somebody, well, this is the science. You kind of go, okay, here.
Yeah, we don't like that science guy who was telling us that for 5 years. So because that wasn't real science, that was made up science.
So here I am asking it, and hopefully everybody understands that we're asking for real science. But what kind of things? I mean, has there been I want to say that I remember from years and years and years ago when I first heard about L-arginine that there was a study of 20,000 high-risk patients. Is this ringing a bell with you where they were given L-arginine and the results were staggering? But anyway, I don't want to get into what's your science?
Well, the science of nitric oxide, what happened, John, is they thought that nitric oxide was like, inhaling your tailpipe of a car. They thought it was a noxious gas. And it was the scientists that were awarded the Nobel Prize, including a couple of others that I happen to have met, that basically determined that no, it was that too much nitric oxide can become toxic if it's not buffered by antioxidants or anti-inflammatories. I didn't know that. I just kind of stumbled into that. And so when Judy Mikovits and Dr. David Martin, who, by the way, who I talked to yesterday, said to say hello to you. Dr. Martin, when they started looking at my product and the science, they said, how did a dumb guy like you come up with this? And I'm sure that's why you waited for a long time, John, to even try it, because you thought, you mean that overweight, loudmouth guy on the front row of the Jazz has actually got a health product? Are you kidding me? So the bottom line is the fact that I'm alive is the miracle, second of all. But the science is now clearly defined. I mean, nitric oxide, but it needs to be buffered. If you just take a handful of arginine, or if you think you're getting all you need by taking 2 glasses of beet juice, you're totally mistaken. You need to have balanced amino acids and antioxidants and anti-inflammatories and natural beets and those types of things all together, buffered. And we found through our scientific validation, both through AI and through the top scientists in the world that weren't bought off by the powers that be, they came back and they said, oh my gosh, this stuff actually works like we thought. And because of that, we think it will prevent the pain, the suffering, the aspects like what Ken's had with the joints. I mean, we have people who report to us that, their frozen shoulders no longer frozen, that they're actually able to do stuff. And what happens often, Ken, is that people will go on Cardio Miracle and they'll feel so good so soon that all of a sudden they'll go, well, man, I must be doing something right. They go off it. 3 days later, they go, oh my gosh, I forgot how bad I used to feel. Because there's a bit of a euphoria that comes with good oxygen delivery. John, from being, in my opinion, probably the most unbelievable athlete I ever watched that never stopped. You never stopped. And you were always in better shape than anyone else. Well, that's because your exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, because of your meticulous training and probably some good genetics, even though your dad was at the bar running the club and the restaurant all those years. The fact is you were an anomaly, but you were like a marathon runner that just happened to be the best passer and eventually became a pretty darn good shooter at the same time. And so because of that exciting thing, it's that exchange of oxygen and blood flow, I think, that had contributed to your greatness. and is now contributing to people like Ken and myself who are wounded warriors, essentially, and trying to make sure we have some mobility and a good life.
How is it different? I may know the answer to this, but how is it different than like when you go for a surgery, for example, and they give you this horrible anesthesia, and then you say, no, I react poorly to anesthesia. Then they give you these anti-nausea, and they just add the meds to kind of combat the previous ones. How is this different? You talked about you're giving this one to create nitric oxide, but now we got to give you this, and now we got to give you that. How is it different?
Good question. The thing that happens is we recommend if a person's going to go into surgery, that in surgery they're going to have a situation where they'll actually have an easier surgery. If they have a highly bleeding surgery, you probably want to stay off the Cardio Miracle for 3 or 4 days ahead of surgery because it does increase blood flow. But as soon as the surgery's over and the blood has been abated, essentially, the wound healing is remarkable. We're seeing people that knee replacement, hip replacement, shoulder replacement, they're recovering in half the time. Now, they're still doing the work. I'll never forget, I had a great marathon runner. He used to do a sprint Ironman and in Montana, a friend of mine, and I put him on this product. He went from back of the pack to winning the national title. And I said, and he said, and we were doing an interview a number of years ago, and he says, hey, don't take credit for all of this, John. He says, I had to do the work. And I said, of course you did the work. What Cardio Miracle did for you was enabled you to get more oxygen and work harder and recover faster so you can continue to up your game. And we're seeing people's PR in the bike, hike, swim world go from 1%, 2%, even as high as 8, 9% PR improvement on Cardio Miracle. And it's all about oxygen and blood flow and anti-inflammatories, as Ken brought up, because if you're feeling crappy, you don't want to work out.
Almost sounds like steroids. You know, the steroids would allow people to be able to work harder. I mean, it doesn't do it. You don't take a steroid and all of a sudden look like Ken and these guys. You have to do the steroids and you get to work hard longer without the setbacks, right?
Exactly. But the challenge was the side effects of that led to dementia. Because when you're often with steroids and things like that, they're highly inflammatory, so they dilate and help the blood pump. But at the same time, they're frying the microcapillaries in the brain, in the sexual organs, in the feet, and in the brain. And so that's why Cardio Miracle is like the natural approach to that. And that's why we got the BSCG approval for even weightlifters, bodybuilders, athletes of all kinds. And we're actually have not done as good a job in getting the message out. But, you know, our mutual acquaintance, Danny Ainge, and people like the BYU staff, Tom Homo and Chad Lewis, all those guys take it. Jason Buck, who won the Outland Trophy. Jason, you know, this kept his father alive, in his opinion, and he feels like he missed the dementia head trauma problem that many of his colleagues have even passed away from because he's been taking Cardio Miracle faithfully now for over a decade.
Hey, you know, John, I'm a curious cat, and I love going kind of back to the origins. I have a question, because you put so many different ingredients that they help each other, you know, perform better, you know, within our systems. How long did it take you, and how did you come, I mean, the amount of ingredients that work together for our benefit, how did you come to getting that recipe just right?
Well, you know, Ken, I hate to say it, but it was providential, because as the professor who tested the product the first time in 2018 at the University of Ohio, in my opinion, the smartest nitric oxide guy in the world, turned to me and says, how did you do this? He said, this is remarkable. And I said, I just listened to smart people and connected the dots. And I think actually it's one of those crazy things where if you're not have blinders on and are limited by what you knew, I didn't know anything 17 years ago. So I talked to the smartest people, and because I was relatively intelligent, I connected the dots, and then I did the research and thought, well, if this works, then this should work, and this should work. And then when I took it to the professor who had written over 400 papers scientific papers. They have a post office named after him in Europe. He won the Madame Curie Award, which some of us remember from grade school. Well, he won that award, and he said to me, this all works beautifully together, like a symphony. And he says, how did you do this? And I said, I just tried my best. And Judy Mikovits, Dr. Judy, says, John, it was a download from God. You're not smart enough to have done this. So and David Martin has said the same thing. So the two smartest people I know have both said, I'm not smart enough. So I'll give God the credit, because all I did was be on his errand and try to help heal the hearts and health of mankind. And that's why it's a passion for me now in my 74th year. And that's why we're being featured as a remedy in the Maha film coming out in October with our mutual friend Jeff Hayes Films, as being one of the remedies for all of the nonsense and post-traumatic stress disorder that the whole country and whole world suffered over the last 6 years.
Yeah, Jeff's amazing. His films are amazing. He's been generous enough to loan us his studio for the show today. So we just a great man, a great friend he's become. I had a picture of you when you were talking about how you put these things together when Ken asked. I had you in front of this cauldron going, a little dash of this, and we'll just do a little dash of that. And all of a sudden you come up with that. So I know it's more than that. But a little bit back to the science. One of the things they used with all these other things is they had a group of X amount of people doing it. Is there any study? What are those called?
Double-blind studies or clinical studies?
Clinical, yeah.
Yeah. We've actually tried twice. And what's happened both times is there seems to be some sinister efforts to not get approval from certain government types in order to get it approved. So I've spent a lot of money. The good news is the results, even though we couldn't get total approval, so I can't just tell everything that I've seen. John and Ken, I've seen thousands and tens of thousands of people that their blood work, their symptomology, their prescription dependence has improved dramatically. And when you have people like myself, it's often pretty funny. People will say, well, let's take your blood pressure, chubby. And I go, well, that's all right. And my blood pressure is better than a marathon runner. They go, how can that be? That's impossible, especially since my dad died at 62. So the reality is I was just on the phone today doing another one in the African American community, because their life expectancy, along with the Native Americans, is horrific. And they're dying, they're dropping like flies. They really are, with diabetes and everything else. So we're committed to that. But the answer is we have so many verifiable individual stories that it's mind-boggling. And what we invite people to do, John, is try it, risk-free, money-back guarantee. Get your blood work done, go to the doctor, see what happens to your A1C if you're a diabetic, see what happens to your cholesterol ratio if you're concerned about that, see what happens on your blood pressure and your vitamin D level. One of the most important parts of this is that our second scientific study, showed that Cardio Miracles 24/7 nitric oxide expression signaled the body to release, and mine releases more than others, from the fat cell, the vitamin D right into the bloodstream. And so we've seen people whose vitamin D level, they've been taking 10, 20,000 units of vitamin D, barely move the needle from the chronically deficient. We see them go on Cardio Miracle and it goes up shockingly. And so that's one of the major benefits people have, is they go, I never get sick anymore. I have not had one day off work due to sickness in 17 and a half years. Not one day. And breezed through COVID. Through COVID.
Absorption's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
And you can take, even something great like vitamin C, you can take too much vitamin C, it makes you deficient somehow. So that combination of things is so difficult to accomplish. And you see all these great companies trying to do it. So you've obviously accomplished it at a different level. So the anecdotal stuff, and I guess that's what it's called when it's on a set of individual basis, it's anecdotal, is off the charts, but you balance that with the
scientific validation through AI and through these published journals that are respected. They're not fraudulent like many are coming out. And then we're now backing it up with we are going to be doing, like I said, for 3 years I've been trying 2 different studies and it didn't work out because of government red tape that was in the way. We're actually going to start two more in the next little while with primarily 20 to 40 people. But the benefits we always see that I have seen for 17 years, blood pressure has a dramatic support, cholesterol ratio improves significantly, HDL higher, LDL lower, even though there's some argument about cholesterol. Even though I don't think cholesterol is a bad thing, I think it's a good thing.
Me too.
But still balancing it. But triglycerides drop like a stone in most cases. We see the A1C, which is the marker for diabetics, shockingly improved.
Explain that one a little bit. Diabetes, because when you're sitting there saying heart, energy, oxygen, I don't see blood sugar issues. But now you're saying diabetics too?
Well,
Explain that.
I'll tell you why. The real problem with diabetes, and let's talk about our, again, mutual friend Larry Miller. Larry Miller, you went to lunch with him. I went to lunch with him. He liked to eat. So do I. And also stress. The number one killer of people is stress, because of it downregulates your nitric oxide and your vitamin D3. So what we, on the diabetes side, if you're not getting enough oxygen, what happens is your lining of your artery becomes inflamed. And then you start taking insulin and other prescription drugs, which are symptomatic, that they help with a symptom, but they actually at the root cause make things more inflamed.
Yep.
So it's cellular inflammation is the major enemy. And all diabetes is essentially, in my opinion, is inflammation of the blood circulatory system, the lining of the artery, which is the endothelial lining, which is where nitric oxide comes from. It comes out of the lining of the artery. So if you stimulate the artery to produce nitric oxide, like as a teenager, you're going to have a healthier lining, which is going to ward off the sugar that's in your blood that then erodes away at those capillaries. So those microcapillaries in diabetes, the eyes, the mouth, the brain, neuropathy, all of those things are microcapillary systems. And diabetes is the inflammation in those microcells that is not getting adequate oxygen and nutrition and nitric oxide expression. So if you improve the nitric oxide, you improve the blood flow, you improve the oxygen, you slam it with a couple of anti-inflammatories at the same time, you're going to heal the lining of those microcapillaries. And so you're not going to go blind. You're not going to have your leg amputated. You're not going to get dementia or Alzheimer's if you have healthy microcapillaries at the far end of our body's sprinkler system, so to speak.
It just makes such sense. Again, if anybody's listening and wants to, I just think every drug kind of fits in the same category. They're all harmful.
They're all toxic and inflammatory, but they may help a temporary system.
Right.
So we're not We're not against all drugs. We're just against lifetime drug use that gets layered on top of each other. It's the old knee bone connected to the hip bone. And once you have one, pretty soon you're on 12. The average person my age, John, I think statistically takes 12 to 14 medications. Yeah. I haven't been on a single medication in 17 and a half years. And I have a stressful life. I don't work out adequately. I don't eat as good as I should. And I have a family history that should have killed me 15 years ago.
Speaking about eating and diets, that's another question I had does this work better with certain types of diets like vegan or vegetarian, or some people are in the in that protein meat type diet, which may be even more beneficial if you're taking in a lot of meat with
great question. Great question, Ken. The fact is, we're seeing unbelievable results with intermittent fasting. I'm not the best example of it, but I've lost 30 pounds in the last couple of years. I've also I've gained 20 because I went on 2 cruises, and that kind of messes you up. And I have family reunions. And I'm the cook, which is another problem. But the reality is that we're seeing that vegans are often deficient in certain things like vitamin D in some cases, and they're not getting enough proteins. And so nitric oxide and the ingredients of Cardio Miracle is a great meal replacement for people that essentially has minimal calories. It's low glycemic. We actually have people, I did 13 days. We have people who've done 40 days on Cardio Miracle alone, and they were fine and they lost a ton of weight. and they saw all their markers improve. So yes, the answer is it's great for intermittent fasting. It's great as a meal substitute. And our science tells us, one of our papers, that it doesn't interrupt the fast. So when you're fasting till 1 o'clock, you can drink Cardio Miracle and it has no impact on your fast, which is shocking. And so people who are way too much or nervous about the fats and the animal fats and those types of things, Cardio Miracle helps your capillary wall to be slippery instead of like Velcro that would gather up the cholesterol that's floating through with all that fat. It kind of makes it like, a turbo, like a slippery slide, because nitric oxide makes that wall of the artery healthy instead of.
You're making me hungry for a nice juicy ribeye.
He sure
There you
is.
go.
I think somebody's cooking one in the room next door too, so it's really hitting me.
So yes, it helps on all diets, but it's also, one of the things that I've tried to do is this product, and we obviously people say all the time, sounds too good to be true. So just try it. People say, well, it's kind of pricey. Well, I say, compared to what? Compared to losing your eyesight? Compared to dementia? Have you ever taken care of an elderly parent? Would you spend a couple of bucks a day on your parents to keep them from not having dementia or Alzheimer's or losing their sight or having their leg amputated or whatever? Our cost per serving on our subscription model is like $1.25 a serving. $1.50. I mean, that's nothing. You buy a bottle of water at the airport for $8, for heaven's sakes. You buy a Starbucks for $6, $7. You buy a Monster drink that's got 150 milligrams of, or grams of, or milligrams of caffeine that is not good for you. This is all good for you, and it can replace, I think, 75% or 80% of all the supplements you're taking.
If you could get insurance to pay for this, you could charge anything for it.
We actually have a HSA approval from Cali Means.
No kidding.
HSA and FSA approved Cardio Miracle in 1 week based upon our scientific studies. Casey and Cali Means, I texted them after they were on the Tucker Carlson show. Cali got back to me. I sent him the information. We got approval at the highest levels. And that's one of the reasons we're going to be in the Remedy film with the Maha with Jeff Hayes coming out this October, that we hope everyone will watch and everyone will be a part of. And again, John, I have to say this because I know we're probably getting short on time. Your advocacy, I always thought you were a great player. And I thought you had a wonderful family and a good person. But your advocacy for what is true and right the last 6 years has been absolutely inspirational to me. Because I know what it meant to you to be at Gonzaga. And I know what that meant to you to have them do what they did, and other people, and people who put you down just like they did Aaron Rodgers and Kyrie Irving and everything else. But you had a spotless reputation. And for you to be an advocate for liberty, human choice, and advocacy for a corrupt system gone awry, you went up beyond Olympic levels, in my view, for you being such a courageous patriot and a person who wanted to help humanity. So I just have to say that. And I don't know Ken well enough, but I'm anxious to get to know him even better. So it's delightful for me to have the chance to visit with you.
Well, thank you. I did pay him for that comment. So
no, totally.
How does this, so I guess when you're talking about your product, one of the most exciting things about it is but literally a money back guarantee. So you can take this, how does a person try it? When do you take it? It obviously comes in a powder form. Powder form because that makes it more bioavailable. People often wonder, say, well, what's the difference between this and the arginine capsules? Well, you'd have to take about 100 capsules to equal one of our servings, because a capsule can only contain a half a gram. We have 10.5 grams of pure, top-notch, whole food, plant-based ingredients. Every capsule has 500 milligrams, and capsules are only about 20% absorbable comparatively. So you'd have to take about 80 capsules to equal one serving of Cardio Miracle, one scoop. So you take it best on an empty stomach. Some people say, well, I don't like the taste. You have no idea how nasty these ingredients taste by themselves. It is like, I call it a raccoon float. For somebody from Spokane, you probably saw a few raccoons on the side of the road growing up. The reality is it tastes terrible,
Grapeseed extract is terrible. Arginine tastes terrible. We've had to formulate it with the finest fruits and vegetable blends, organic monk fruit, organic stevia, the best money can buy, and we've had to improve it 8 times to get where we are now. You can take it with any vegetable juice, any fruit juice. You can take it with any amount of water. You can take it in a shot. You can take it with a gallon of water and you have no taste at all. You can mix some apple cider vinegar in it. We just recommend that you don't take it immediately with protein in a protein shake. You can take it in a fruit smoothie shake, even with half and half or whole cream.
Why is protein a deal breaker?
Protein is a deal breaker because it's like the freeway now in Salt Lake on I-15. You remember when you were here 30,
Sure.
40 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty easy getting in and out. It's kind of a pain now, and just like in California. The freeway of the artery is also crowded with amino acids and proteins. So when you're drinking protein, it's cruising down the freeway. If the nitric oxide's trying to produce with the amino acids, the arginine citrulline, then it's all of a sudden now it's in a traffic jam. There's too much crowd going down the same pathway. So we just recommend 30 minutes before protein, 30 minutes or 60 minutes after a protein meal. And I'm not talking about 5 or 10 grams. I'm talking about 20, 30 grams of protein. Kind of crowds the freeway. And so we want people to get the most benefit from it. So that's why I say mix it with orange juice, mix it with grape juice, put in frozen fruit, vegetable juice, whatever you want. But just don't clog it up with protein to get the maximum effect. And a person can take 2 at a time, 2 servings at a time. They can take it morning and night. The nighttime is the time where your lymphatic system is essentially squeezing your brain of all the toxic waste that accumulates during the day. That's why we rest and we sleep. Cardio Miracle helps the lymphatic system drain out the toxic waste and be filtered out through the system. That's why the lymphatics work so well. That's why the recovery works so well. That's why people recover from the surgery so well. And their scars are better than they've ever had before. And so we even have had lots of results with young women with pregnancy, though we can't talk about that. We say, take the ingredient panel, show it to your pediatrician, and it will put your prenatal vitamins to shame. There's no comparison. And ours are plant and organic based. But we can't say that because the officials, we just say, take it to them and make your own decision. You're in charge of your life. We've seen wonderful benefits from people. I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. But I have seen so many incredible things in the last 17 years. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And that's why Jeff Hayes, our mutual friend, he featured me in 2020, the month before the pandemic, in Supplements Revealed with this product with Dr. Gentempo. And after the interview, Dr. Gentempo goes, I need to put my mom, my brother, and everybody I know on this product. That was Dr. Gentempo saying, hey, who's that overweight guy who was in here talking about nitric oxide? And all of a sudden he's on board because Jeff Hayes actually was one of my very, very first customers because we were neighbors many years ago in Park City. So I always practiced on Jeff and hoped that he would grow an extra 6 inches taller, but he's just become smarter and thinner as the years have gone on.
Is this the final iteration?
Well, no, because it's never over, John. We're always looking at improving. I actually found out something the other day that I want to tweak in the next version coming out. I will not rest. And people say, well, aren't you afraid people will knock it off and copy it? And I go, they can't afford to. They're not willing to put the kind of ingredients in it that I put in. Because this isn't about the money for me. It's about the results and having the best product in the world. And that's why we believe that the who's who now endorses it and takes it every day.
So you suggest person first thing in the morning, 1 shot, and then another one before you go to bed. That's kind of the idea?
Yeah, or an hour after dinner.
Okay.
And if they have a problem, there's about 5% that it makes your brain feel like you're kind of alive and awake because there's no stimulants. There's no caffeine, no natural caffeine, so there's no stimulants in this. The other caveat, since you brought it up, and thank you, very good questions. It's best not to take it immediately with caffeine or right behind coffee. Better to take it ahead of coffee for coffee drinkers. Take it, give yourself 5 or 10 minutes, and then because caffeine downregulates the nitric oxide. That's a scientific fact. And so people who are heavy caffeine takers or drinkers, they actually have less nitric oxide and less vitamin D. And so that's why they need this to supplement that. And that's why we say to people, drink the coffee if you want to drink coffee for the flavor, the taste, and the enjoyment, not for the energy and the stimulation. Let this be your substitute. And we've had people go from 8 cups a day to 2 or 1 and be thrilled, making Cardio Miracle their go-to hydration and daily water source to combine when they need a boost. And you really can't overdose on this, even with 58 ingredients, because the body will mechanize plant and whole food ingredients versus synthetic ones and get rid of it through the elimination system of the kidney and the liver.
Back to medicine. All medicine is synthetic now, right? It's all petroleum products, isn't that?
Pretty much.
I mean, almost.
You look at the drugs. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the problem. And the body knows that. And so when people say, why isn't this drug working very well? Well, because the lining of the artery, which is governed by nitric oxide and the endothelial wall, says, you're not getting in here, pal. You're a foreign substance. We're not going to let you in. When you open it up with natural food and plant-based nitric oxide and amino acids, they go, welcome.
Yeah.
Come to the mitochondria, and at the same time reducing the inflammation. And we do know that in most people's books now, inflammation is the root cause of everything. Nitric oxide is the body's greatest anti-inflammatory, and when we now stimulate it 24/7 safely because of our antioxidants and our anti-inflammatories, it makes all the difference in that inflammatory condition, which goes back to Ken's knees and his shoulders that he punished himself with through those years of separators and all the drills from football. And, you had a few floor burns. You were amazing because you never really got hurt other than an ankle here or there. The reality is amazing because you were in such good shape. But this for the rehab, we're hoping to get this in through my old friend Danny Ainge in to get it with the team because we are approved, and Mike Smith and others on that group all take Cardio Miracle and think it's the greatest thing ever.
Is there anybody it's bad for? I'm sorry, Ken, you got something up there? Go ahead. I'll ask this if you got something next. Sorry if I spotted something that I didn't, but is there anything that this you'd say, probably not for you?
Good question. Primarily only people that may have chronic bleeding problems or
low blood platelets.
Well,
is that the same?
It actually will help the oxygenation of the platelets, and it'll take thick blood and make it a better viscosity because of the oxygenation. So the platelets, I think you have some, if I remember right, there's somebody that was important to you that had some platelet issues. The reality is it helps the platelets be slippery and not stick together. And it actually, I believe, helps the microcapillaries in the bone marrow. So you actually produce better, healthier red cells and better T cells to fight against negative things. People who are on a blood thinner because they are an absolute at risk to throw a clot, they probably should wait and get under the direction of a good physician, health practitioner, not somebody who just gives them prescriptions. That those types of people need to be cautious. But we've seen such amazing benefits in virtually across the board. And what I tell people with the advent of AI, if you put in any condition, any illness, sickness, whatever, and then put in the name of it, let's say you put in MS and nitric oxide, it'll come up and say, usually caused by a deficiency of nitric oxide. And then you do MS, vitamin D, they go, usually caused by a deficiency of nitric oxide and vitamin D. So the irony is now, you don't have to go and wait in line at the emergency room. You can just go in, and not that AI is perfect, but the information now, because there's 200,000 studies, and vitamin D, thanks to Dr. Oz and Joe Mercola, has been the most studied and Googled vitamin of the last 5 years. We have a paper that says that Cardio Miracle's vitamin D with the nitric oxide is by far the superior delivery of vitamin D3. That's huge if we don't want to get sick again and we're surrounded by all this pollution, corruption, and who knows what else is going to come from the skies. And of course, you in Washington, you drive through those mountains and all that smoke and everything going on from the forest fires in the summer. we need all the best oxygen we can deliver to our blood we can, and to get rid of the waste products through our lymphatic system. And Cardio Miracle helps with all that.
Well, John, this has been an incredible session. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your product, and we're as excited about it as you are. Well, maybe not quite as much. I don't know if anybody's more excited about it than you
No, nobody is. That's okay.
Well,
I'm just glad you're more excited. That's good.
Well, there you have it. cardiomiracle.com/The Ultimate Assist, and you can find this product. And if you have people that need it, and it sounds like everybody needs it,
they can get their money back if they don't.
And you get your money back if it doesn't work. It sounds like a pretty good bargain. So, John, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Admire and appreciate the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Special thanks to our production team for making this possible. Our podcast manager is Janet Bueller. Our guest relations co-coordinator is Stacy Stockton. Our producer, sound engineer, and editor is Elliot Foster. And our graphics and animation by Sean Coyne.